Hello and welcome to another edition of Design for the Times. I'm your host, Richard Christopher Scuderi. Well, I'm very happy to have in studio. You know, I don't want to say in studio anymore. Do you ever watch Andy Cohen and the Clubhouse?
Sure.
Yes. I want a Clubhouse. And so far, we're in year 2. This is our second show in season 2. It's never looked more like a clubhouse than it does. So I'm very happy to have with me, who I feel have become friends, Ken and Suzie Nerger, and they own this wonderful haunt that you got to take a ride, maybe a ride on a weekend or when the weather starts to get nicer, and come spend some time in downtown Flemington. Their store is called Ye Old Antique and Curiosity Shop, and it's on Main Street in Flemington, New Jersey. Welcome to Design for the Times.
Thanks, Richard. It's good to be here again.
Very good.
You.
And we have a familiarity with each other because if you follow me on social media, you'll know that I actually do a program which you can watch on Facebook Live called Modern Design. In fact, sometimes I intertwine the names a little bit, so I did pretty good with all that stuff we had to get to. So our topic today is antiques and where antiques fit a place in a modern home. You know, styles have become very modern. And particularly, it started maybe about 8 or 9 years ago. LA, you know, areas of the country where they were classically modern. But it's even really picked up in our tri-state area where things are getting cleaner and cleaner. And when things get cleaner, we start to lose some of the things that are out there.
The opulence.
Exactly. So antiques will always have a place in my home. I think they're a value. I think when I decorate a home, I'm telling a story, and that has to have some history to it, and antiques do a good job about that. Why don't we start a little bit about your guys and your background in antiques, your love of antiques. How did Ye Old Antique and Curiosity Shop begin? Where did it come from? I'll start with one of you.
Yeah, you can talk.
Well, we were very, very ardent collectors.
Okay.
And
just personally?
Just personally.
Okay.
And having grown up personally in my own childhood, I was always surrounded by antiques and antiquity.
Right.
My grandmother lived in a home that George Washington actually lived in, bona fide, in the town of Closter, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And there was a spy by the name of Harry Anson that lived on the property, and he was hung by the British for treason. And so there was...
A little dark there, Ken.
Yeah, very dark. But, and you know, just developed a very strong love of our past over the years, nurtured by people like my grandparents.
And we live in a 1740s old farmhouse in Clinton Township.
So you really don't want to fill that with lucite chairs and
so
bling
antiques
chandeliers
fit well
within that.
Yeah.
So it started with something that, which often happens to people often when they do their homes, they start to develop tastes and collections. So that makes sense. How did this turn into a business?
We ran out of room.
Okay, that'll happen.
We ran out of room, and
no, we always wanted to open up an antique store, but we have 5 kids, and now that they're older, we had the opportunity came about. A friend of ours owned an antique store, and decided to not do it anymore, and asked if we wanted to take his space, and the timing was right, and we just love it, and we meet such interesting people, and and we just love doing it. So.
And you've made a big change. You've recently taken on more space and moving to a little bit more, I would say, more central location. Tell our viewers where you're physically located.
Sure. Well, we used to be, for those that were at our old place, we're at 20 Main Street, which was a tiny little antique and curiosity shop. Now we're at 139 Main. So we've moved from Flemington. We used to be across from the post office, which is the end of the commercial block, if you will, of historic downtown. Now we're all the way to the other end of the street, on Main Street as well.
But a much bigger space.
139 Main, yeah. We have.
And then you have the building next door.
We have the building next door as well. So we have over 3,000 square feet.
Big.
Yeah.
And loaded with stuff.
A little bit of everything.
Right.
And getting back to your question before about how did we get into the antique business. Well, I had always been an art dealer and antiques. It just made sense to have a brick and mortar shop.
Sure.
In this day and age with Amazon fulfilling people's wishes and having them dropped off like the next day. We said, you know, antiques is something, the stores are disappearing, but It's something that you can't get on Amazon. You can't.
Sure.
You want to touch it, feel it, see it, have a connection to the past.
Exactly.
And Suzie and I like to connect the dots for our clientele that way.
Would I be wrong to think that those people out there that are looking for antiques would probably more likely to want the tactile store to be able to touch and feel things than, you know, maybe those that wouldn't? I don't think you ever should generalize, but maybe in this case it probably is true. Those people want to feel those things. They want to feel the history. Maybe there's a little dust on them. That's okay.
Right.
That's part of the whole thing.
And we try to go to barns and people's houses and get the backstory of the things we buy, so that we could pass that on.
And that's the thing about finding things that have age to them. They do tell a story, which is always kind of a nice thing, as opposed to things that come from shipping crates from Asia.
That's right.
To have some stores. So it's one thing to love antiques. It's one thing to fill your house with antiques. It's another thing to make money at it. So when you took over that space, were you afraid you were never going to make any money? You had 5 kids. That's kind of scary.
No, I don't think so. I think that we always had a strong faith, Richard, that we would be successful.
We figured we would try, and if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. And it helps that we love what we're doing, because it's like when we get up in the morning, we enjoy actually going to work.
And I would have to say that's probably, I say, the key to life, because I work 7 days a week. If it's a passion, you're not working anymore. You're enjoying yourself, and luckily you're getting some money for doing that, hopefully, if you do it well.
Well, I don't see anything. I don't get paid. I'm not on the payroll. I'm just simply the guy that done the gal Friday. I'm a guy.
I got it.
And you meet such interesting people, and even if they don't come and buy anything, they tell their friends, or they walk through our store and they're able to say, "Oh my God, my grandmother had that," and they have such fond memories of a lot of the stuff that they say. So,
well, a couple things I would imagine. One is there are a couple layers to your business, and the first layer is you have to acquire stuff.
That's correct.
So I would imagine every time you're out somewhere, you're observant what people are getting rid of, who's having an estate sale. Where does the farming for you guys begin?
Usually with phone calls. People call us. The word on the street is that Suzie Nerger at Ye Olde Antique and Curiosity Shop is buying treasures. And they call, and they bring their stuff in, and it usually stays.
Wow.
We offer fair prices based on the current market, and we have to leave room for Suzie to be able to pay the overhead and rent and all of that. But all in all, we get to fulfill a minor rush by doing this. It certainly isn't for the money. I would say it's not for the money. But it's for this thrill that we get to be temporary stewards
of wonderful things.
Of wonderful things. So now we don't have to hold on to them for 5, 10, 20 years, 40 years.
We get to enjoy them for a little while.
Even a day. Even a day to know that I had something that was in Theodore Roosevelt's collection, such as these candelabras. It's just, you just don't know what you're ever going to get.
So people are coming to you, and one of the things I want to do at this point and at the end of our broadcast is to tell people how they can reach you. Again, the address and then the phone number. 139
Main Street in Flemington, New Jersey. We have a phone number of 908-227-6641 or 908-310-1995. And we have a website as well as our Facebook presence. And the website is www.ye antique, ANTIQUE.
Oh, you forgot.
Curiosity.
Curiosity.
Yep, CURIOSTY. Shop, SHOP.com.
Did you ever think of doing the shoppy with the PPE on the end?
The English way.
I think the name was long enough as it was.
Yeah, it is pretty long.
We got to do an abbreviation.
It'll make you stand out. So there's good and bad. So the economy has changed, but also people's tastes have changed, and we're a trend what's more modern. So I have to tell you, I have noticed that almost all my haunts for antiques have disappeared. So maybe, in fact, that's actually good for your business, because the few that remain will be something that will be sought after. So that's probably a very good thing actually for you guys.
Very valid point. And
so the first part of it is that many people are in transition in their life, right? The baby boomers are, they say a lot of them retiring, they're going south. New Jersey is a very expensive place to live in. So they call you because they want to get rid of their things or maybe consignment some of their things. So that's how you sort of continue having inventory come through. So that's a good opportunity.
Yeah, most of them have saved stuff for their kids, and then their kids move
the
out,
kids never want it. They never want it.
They've all turned into minimalists.
Right.
For the most part.
They don't want it.
So we see a lot of downsizing, but we also see people, young people that are moving into town that they don't have anything, and they want the furniture, and they want, you know, special little things.
Well, actually, you know, truth be told, if you are starting out with nothing, an antique shop, and you're very approachable, I think, because you have all sort of price points, is probably one of the best places to get some things to start because they're readily available. You don't have to order them, and you can leave with them, and they're affordable.
Right.
That's correct.
So you have people coming to you because they're looking to get rid of stuff. Is it sort of in that way like a consignment? Do you give them back if they don't sell, or once you give them, that's
we buy everything outright primarily. So it's too hard to do consignment.
Do people bring things to you, or do you go to their house to see what they have?
We do both.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's sort of the first thing. So that there's an opportunity there if you're looking, if you're watching our program, that Ken and Suzie could come out to you guys and take a look at your things and then perhaps help you get rid of them and, you know, have be monetarily satisfactory for both of you. The second thing is that you talked about, and I find so interesting, is that you guys do estate sales.
We do indeed.
So tell us a little bit about that part of your business.
Well, that part of the business started many, many years before we opened up our brick and mortar store.
Okay.
Suzie and I have been doing estate sales for over 22 years.
Great.
We have a lot of experience, and we have the ingredients to bring the clientele that hire us everything from the proper morality and ethics that need to be in place in order to handle somebody's personal belongings and artifacts, and also to derive the highest amount of profit for them.
Sure.
We work for the client, not for the customer.
Do you often, when you're doing an estate sale, if the people are still with us, do you often ask them to just kind of go?
It's not a good idea for them to stay,
be
only
there.
Because they're too attached to a lot
and
of
they
the
may be
stuff.
telling the stories themselves of the
well, it's very
others.
emotional for
Very
a lot of
emotional.
people, because when you think about it, they either are selling their house,
right,
and they grew up with this stuff, and it has a lot of meaning, and you know, you can only keep so much, so they usually take what they want to keep and then sell the rest. So
if you were to do an estate sale, like typically a Friday, Saturday kind of thing?
Yep. Typically Friday, Saturday, sometimes Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
And if it's a very big sale, Richard, we'll do Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Sure.
And sometimes Thursday too.
And then finally, it's the finished end, and that is having what you have and then selling and people coming in. So typically, when is your rush day? Are you open on Sunday? Is it a Saturday? When are people coming in because they're just looking and they're curious?
to our store?
Yes.
Every day.
Oh, you know what? We're open every day, 10 in the morning to 6 at night.
7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Right.
And I've been talking to my husband about I should just close one day. And as soon as I think that's the day to close, I'm busy that day. So there's no rhyme or reason. A lot of times the weather has a lot to do with it, with those cold, like a cold, snowy or rainy day. Well, rainy days people like to get out and do stuff indoors. But you know, it just depends. Those nice couple days we had this week, I was so busy. I stayed up until 7, so we never kick anybody out. If they come in at 6, they could stay as long as they want.
And don't you think in a way it's sort of a little bit like throwing a party? Right? You're meeting people, you're putting stuff out. It may not be food, but you're putting things out.
Yes.
And you're developing a rapport. And if that is appealing to you as a person, that's not really working, is it?
No,
not working hard. You're not digging a ditch.
No.
Right?
You're not.
So why don't we have about 13 minutes left, so why don't we get to some of the items, and then I'm going to talk about what's trending and what people are collecting.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to be gingerly with this because I'm not by nature, and this is probably pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So I would say, with my limited amount of antiques, that this is a candelabra, correct?
That is a candelabra.
And heavy. It seems to have a marble base.
Yep.
And then crystals on it. So I see there's a pair of these here in studio. And tell me about this, where you acquired them, and and you know, some history of what this is.
These came out of one of our estate sales in Upper Nyack, New York.
Okay.
And they unfortunately did not sell.
Okay.
And I then acquired them from the estate at the end of the estate sale. Again, our first and foremost, we want to make money.
You bring back to the store but doesn't sell.
No, usually we don't.
Okay.
But in rare occurrences like this, where we just don't want to see it donated to a charity, we say, you know what, we'll spend the money, we'll invest in it.
So these would be mostly found on top of a fireplace mantle, correct?
That's correct.
So they'd be on one end, and sometimes they'd be another piece or something in the middle to break it up.
I visualize them on a beautiful, like, grand piano, actually, as another thing. So there's a lot to show, so I want to try to do as many as possible, so I'll put this into the camera.
Right.
Now this is kind of fun. This is what I would call, I'm so old I do remember stuff like this. Okay, so I would say this is a curiosity.
That is a old game. It's a
It is
pinball.
a curiosity.
Okay,
But
so this is a curiosity.
Yeah, well, we just brought it in because a lot of people, if for instance, even in a new house, you have a game room.
Right.
Some old games, old board games would just be really cool hanging on the wall.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nice artwork without being artwork.
So I'm going to move on to this because I feel often people say to me, we'll take a new space and so on, but it looks somewhat contrived and they don't know how to bring antiques in. So I always think that antiquated product containers are like the perfect way to do it.
Right.
Now here's a beautiful, there's such a patina on this old coffee can. And tell us a little bit about this can. I mean, the colors are gorgeous. It has a patina. So if you had a very slick modern home, displaying something like this amongst other artifacts, maybe some new, some old.
Can bridge new to old. And
correct,
old to new.
is a great way to bring some depth, even if you're doing contemporary. So tell me about this, and then we'll go over to that one.
Sure. So that one's got not George Washington. That's got Abraham Lincoln on it. That's a rather rare container, and the price is on the bottom, Richard. You can tell the viewers.
I think they should give it to me now. So anyway, it looks nice in my library.
Right.
So an item like this, would you often maybe pair it on a bookshelf with an item like this?
You could.
So this is coffee. And this is tea. There's beautiful color in this, and the colors don't look like they faded or anything like that.
So you can use that, you're right, in the library. Like you could do a Lincoln book with a Lincoln coffee can and use it as a bookend, or you could put them in the kitchen, displaying them in your kitchen.
Would you say things like signs? I remember when I was a little kid growing up, people get my age now, Buster Brown shoes in New Brunswick, and the sign was Buster Brown and so on. Many, many, many years later, one of the restaurants in town, in downtown New Brunswick, trendy restaurant, bought that and hung that Buster Brown sign in their loft space with exposed brick. It was gorgeous.
That's funny you say Buster Brown because I have a Buster Brown belt buckle, and somebody was looking for a belt buckle in our store the other day, and I said, "Oh, I have a Buster Brown, really cool one." And they're like, "What's Buster
Brown?" Don't you hate those people?
They didn't know what Buster Brown was.
Exactly.
Said, well, they used to make shoes in shoe stores and.
Let's talk about these because these are kind of interesting. Tell me about these. These are old postcards.
That's correct.
I'm trying not to read them because they're probably something salacious.
So
let's take a look at
the one on your far right, Richard,
Mm-hmm.
which is the far left for the viewers.
Okay.
Is Halloween.
Okay.
And this one also is Halloween. Halloween postcards are very, very hard to come by. They're very desirable, very collectible.
Should I be touching these with my fingers?
Oh, no, you're fine.
You're doing fine.
And
you're just devalued.
You're adding to the patina.
And a lot of them are dated like 1905.
I'm looking at the date and the beautiful postage on the back. I don't know, you're not going to be able to see the minutia of that, but there's beautiful postage.
Beautiful writing and what they say is really
What's
cool.
interesting on all of those postcards is that very often it will just say Virginia Smith, and it'll say Nyack, New York. No zip code.
Right.
No street, no number.
Well, think about even like in the beginning days of the phones, right? It was like letters, right? It was like CH, and people knew your neighborhood and so on. There wasn't as many people around as there are now. Let's talk about this. This looks like it's
an old program.
Right, Phillies. Okay.
Yeah.
And this says 1969. Now, here's something we talked about last time. I was always trained, like in my design school days, that an antique was 100 years old.
That's correct.
Now people tell me an antique is 50 years old. I do believe it because of the onset of people loving mid-century modern. What is the truth about an antique? Is a true antique 100 years old or not?
In our opinion, it is 100 years or older.
Okay.
Here in the United States.
Okay.
In Europe,
oh, 17,000 years old. Right,
over
right.
2,000 years old.
Sure, sure.
Here, anything that's between, you know, yesteryear, we'll just say the 90s now, and the 19, you know, and 75 years or whatever, that's all vintage.
Sure.
Up until you reach the 100-year point.
I personally love vintage glass, and you have two examples here of some vintage glass. Now, I love Depression glass. I love the colors of glass. People don't realize the beautiful. This sort of has a blue-green.
Jar. Yeah.
Right, a beautiful old mason jar. Hard to sort of make out what it says here.
I usually would have a metal lid.
It says Mason, patented in 1858.
So I'm actually trembling holding this. So this is lovely because it reminds me of where my shop is. I share it with Flemington Fan and Lighting, and these days we're selling a lot of fixtures that have seated glass.
Sure.
And then here's the original seated glass with the bubbles and the, you know, certainly hand blown, and that's just quite beautiful. Now here, for those of us that kind of can remember it, I remember the tail end of it, is a milk jug.
From Flemington.
Right, isn't that great?
So you can
dairies.
repurpose those by putting flowers in them.
So I could see this in a variety of environments where something like this would work, either as a vase or just with other things of the time. I want to try to do this without knocking the books down, but I want to talk about books. Maybe we'll just take one.
Sure.
So one of the things that we talked about is books, and then also first edition books. First of all, I find books beautiful. I'm fortunate enough to have a house that I have a library. Not a huge library, but I just think the spines of books, the age of books, they're just physically beautiful. There was even a trend a while, about 20 years ago, where people were doing wallpaper that actually looked like books, remember?
Sure.
So tell me about first edition books.
Susie, I'll let you do that.
Oh.
We have about 6 minutes, so you got to talk fast. Okay.
Well, of course, the books, even if they're first editions, condition is everything.
Sure.
So we sell a lot of books, mostly children's books. People seem to.
So people are buying the
children's
books for content.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, not for the look of the book or the leather. Yeah.
They're for the content. Very often they will look at a book and say, wow, the binding's gone and all of that, but the pages in here are incredible.
Right.
You know, maybe it was pre-printing press back in the 1810 and 20 period before we went to the block and print, and we're running off, you know, tens of thousands of copies at once. It was done one by one by one.
Isn't that funny? Because if I brought something that was mass produced here, there would be nothing to say about it, right? So every time you go off on something, it leads you to somewhere else, which is really wonderful. In our last 5 minutes that we have left here, I want to talk about what's trending, what people are wanting, what people were looking for, and then of course we'll give the opportunity to come out to your wonderful new space and do it. So let's talk about things that are trending. I said something that I like a lot, and I love depression glass. Now I understand depression glass, I always think of it as the green because my Nana had the beautiful built-in, and she had all the green depression glass, but it comes in a lot of other colors, doesn't it?
Cranberry and, you know.
What's the most popular?
Lime. I would say the red and the blue.
Yeah.
Right. Red and the blue. You just sold a whole set today.
What about dishes and bowls and things of the nature? Anything that people come in that they're looking for? I know it's not so popular around the country, but in Flemington and the Trenton area down this way, Stengel was something that was very big in Trenton and Flemington.
I sold a couple Stengel pieces today.
Right.
You know, they usually buy 1 or 2 pieces, or just they had it, or their grandparents had it, or their parents had it, and they want 1 or 2 pieces, or.
Right. So Stengel is pottery for those of you who don't do it.
That's
it was
correct.
just, you know, very sort of folksy kind of looking, but they made beautiful pasta bowls and display pieces. And I think Stengel and depression glass pair well together.
They do.
What else are people asking for? What is the hot buttons? When you go, ooh, this is going to do well when we sell it? What are people asking
Things
for?
that they can upcycle or change. You mentioned like this bottle. You like this bottle with the advent of LED lights.
Right.
You can turn this into a pendant lamp.
Oh yeah.
Very easily. Because there's no heat generated by the LED lamp.
Also, a lot of the gas-related oil cans and signs, the porcelain signs, which are getting harder and harder to come by.
Yeah,
Especially around the car shows. There's a car shows in the summer in Flemington.
And things with advertising, you know, billboards, things with advertising. Is it because it just beckons to a different time, so it's interesting?
I think most people want to be able to connect to their past.
Okay.
Even if it's not their immediate past, their ancestral past.
Okay.
And to that, I mean that a lot of people are getting their homes complete. They're very minimalistic. They're IKEA to the touch. And they just are missing that sense
But Ken,
of
I would
warmth.
say, even more so if I have a white, clean, minimal space, a little bit of gray, but it's all white.
Sure,
you'd want to have sort of a patina, and you would want to bring in something like this that has some depth to it. It actually makes those pieces that you do have,
pop.
Yeah, it makes it pop. So something like this with a couple of pieces around would really complete a space, and even more so. And this is a moderately priced thing, but it's quite interesting.
That's correct.
Is there anything that if you went to a house sale, you'd say would not sell, that people would say, oh, I have gold here, and then you find that it doesn't really have much value because of the times?
Silver plate. Silver plate.
But what about silver? I have a client who is in her late 80s who has the most beautiful collection of silver. Everybody gave her silver at her wedding. She was from Virginia, where it was really... And I made gorgeous display cabinets, and we display it in her second floor because her children don't want it, and we don't do anything with it.
But she's still deriving happiness
out of it. Yeah,
and that's what it's all about.
So, and people don't use silver when they entertain anymore. No. We're lucky if we get real cups. Yes. So, what else? Anything else that you'd say that people do? Crystal. Yeah.
You know, your Waterford crystal. We do have people that collect it.
Right.
Overall, that market has gone down.
And also like Hummels or anything.
Figurines. China. You know, your Limoges china that you eat off of.
Or the Norman Rockwell. Remember the plates that your parents had that
My
decorated all
we did have the Norman Rockwell.
Yeah, they spent all this money on them, and now they're not worth much.
It's very disappointing, but I will say to those of you that have those things, and if your children are not interested in them, hold on to some of those pieces, because I think the following generation is going to feel differently because they're not going to have access, because the stuff that we're buying now is not going to have any value. It's going to have a short shelf life, and then there's going to be a void of that stuff. So maybe a little bit of hoarding is good. We're getting back to our last 45 seconds. I'd like to give everybody an opportunity to come visit you in your wonderful space. It's Ye Old Antique and Curiosity Shop on Main Street in Flemington. Again, the street address is 139?
139.
Okay.
And the place right next door, 137.
Okay.
Main Street in Flemington.
And your phone numbers, because I know there's two numbers.
Yeah, okay. Susie's number.
You do your number, and you do your number.
My number's 908 310 1995.
Okay.
And mine is 908 227 6641.
And you certainly should contact them about a couple things. Maybe you want to do an estate sale. Maybe you have some pieces you can email them or bring in and see if there's some value to giving to somebody who can really enjoy them. Well, I thank you for tuning into another episode. Look forward to seeing you again. Have a great day.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.